They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleans and your foolish police call the Axeman.
They called him the Axeman, a depraved killer who haunted the streets of New Orleans a century ago. Working under the cover of night, he would creep into homes and brutally slaughter families as they slept, leaving a trail of bloodshed and terror. His weapons of choice were tools meant for chopping wood, but in his hands they became instruments of unholy massacre. Hi folks, I'm Johnny and welcome to The Oddest. The year was 1918 and New Orleans baked under the sultry southern sun. Beneath the canopies of ancient oak trees, people fanned themselves on the verandas of colourful Creole cottages. The air hung heavy with the rich aromas of Cajun cuisine wafting from open windows. Jazz music spilled out onto the streets from smoky bars and dance halls. But beneath the vibrant culture and joie de vivre, a sense of unease lingered. The Great War raged overseas, the Spanish flu pandemic was sweeping the globe, and racial tensions simmered. Into this powder keg atmosphere arrived a terrifying threat, a serial killer wielding an axe who crept through households in the night, indiscriminately butchering victims as they slept. This is the true story of the Axeman of New Orleans. Back in May of 1918, New Orleans was about to meet its most infamous character yet. His arrival marked the beginning of a spine-chilling era that would grip the city for the next 18 months. As night fell, the people of New Orleans found themselves on edge, their ears tuned to every creak and rustle, their eyes darting to every shadow. Each morning brought a mix of dread and anticipation as they unfolded their newspapers with trembling hands. The Axeman's presence cast a shadow of fear over the entire city, leaving no one feeling secure. Even now, his true identity remains shrouded in mystery. Some speculate that he wasn't even human, but rather a spectral entity with the ability to materialise and then vanish at a whim. Others lean more towards a more chilling explanation, painting him as a deranged serial killer who prowled in the dead of night, striking terror by butchering his victims as they slept. But, in truth, the mystery of the Axeman, well, it will remain just that, a mystery. It was the night of the 23rd of May back in 1918 when tragedy struck the Maggio family. Joseph Maggio, a hard-working Italian grocer, and his wife were brutally slain while they slept in their apartment above the grocery store. The scene that met the cops was a grisly one. A panel in the rear door had been crudely chiselled away, granting the killer entry into their home. The murder weapon, a chillingly familiar axe, was discovered within the apartment, its blade stained with the blood of the unfortunate Maggios. Despite valuable items like jewellery and money being conspicuously untouched, the intruder left behind a chilling scene devoid of any motive. Detectives wasted no time delving into this investigation. Despite apprehending and interrogating numerous suspects, all were eventually released due to insufficient evidence implicating them. Amidst the puzzling lack of leads, a lone clue emerged. A cryptic message scrawled in chalk near the Maggio residence. Mrs. Joseph Maggio will sit up tonight. Just right, Mrs. Tony. As investigators delved deeper into their archives, they stumbled upon a startling revelation. A series of eerily similar murders and assaults targeting Italian grocers had occurred back in 1911. In each of these cases, an axe was the weapon of choice. An entry was gained through a panel in the rear door, which echoes the modus operandi of the Maggio murders. Initially believed to be the handiwork of a terror-driven vendetta orchestrated by the mafia, these earlier crimes had left lingering sense of unease with the community. With this disturbing connection unearthed, both the police and the Italian community in the French Quarter braced themselves for the possibility of history repeating itself. Almost exactly a month after the Maggio murder came a second crime. Louis Bossamer, a grocer who lived behind his store with his common-law wife Annie Harriet Lowe, was discovered by neighbours one morning, laying in a pool of blood. He had been badly injured, but thankfully was not dead. Beside him was Annie, also injured but amazingly not dead. Both of them had been hacked with an axe. The weapon was also lying next to Bessemer and was covered with blood. The panel on the kitchen door had been removed, a chisel was lying on the back steps, and nothing had been stolen. After she regained consciousness in Charity Hospital, Annie first claimed that her attacker had been young and very dark, but later she changed her story and started saying that Bessemer had attacked her. The police were sceptical about this, however, never being able to ascertain how exactly Bessemer could have attacked Annie and then fractured his own skull with the axe. After he recovered from his injuries, he was subsequently released. Later on that year, in August, a woman named Mrs. Schneider awakened in the middle of the night to a tall, phantom-like form standing over her bed. She screamed just as the axe fell. A few minutes later, her neighbours had found her unconscious, with her head gashed and bloody, and several of her teeth were knocked out. She recovered also from her injuries. In the wake of Louis Bessemer's ordeal, the community was rocked by yet another brutal assault. Joseph Romano, an Italian grocer, fell victim to the same modus operandi as all the others. Tragically though, Romano succumbed to his injuries mere hours after the attack, leaving behind no clues to unmask this elusive Axeman. As fear tightened its grip on the city, hysteria spread like wildfire. Families took desperate measures, organising nighttime watches to protect their loved ones as they slept. Streets buzzed with tension as people carried loaded shotguns, anxiously awaiting any news of this dreaded Axeman and any sightings that might follow. The 11th of August brought a spine-chilling twist to this saga when rumours spread like wildfire throughout the Tulane and Broad neighbourhood. The killer had been sighted, disguised as a woman. A frantic manhunt ensued, but this elusive figure managed to slip through their grasp. Then, just 10 days later, another sighting sent shivers down the spines of all the residents. A man was reportedly seen leaping over a backyard fence, triggering a swift and determined search effort. Despite the best efforts of a hastily assembled search party, this mysterious figure vanished into the night. The question lingered: were these sightings genuine encounters of the Axeman, or just mere manifestations of a fear-fueled imagination? Amidst the flurry of reported sightings, scepticism arose as many attributed these accounts to rampant panic spreading across the locals. However, tangible evidence of the Axeman's presence could not be ignored. On that same fateful day of August 11th, a man named Al Durand made a chilling discovery outside his home in the early hours of the morning. An axe and a chisel lay ominously near his rear door, hinting at a failed attempt by the intruder to breach his home. Despite damage to the door, it seemed that the killer's efforts were thwarted by its sturdy construction. In late August, the rear door of Paul Lobella's grocery store and residence was chiselled through. No one was home at the time though. The same day, another grocer named Joseph Leboeuf reported that an attempt had been made to chisel through his rear door in the middle of the night. Awakened by the noise though, he had frightened the intruder away. An axe was subsequently discovered, dropped on the steps. Then the following day, another axe was found in the yard of a Mr. Rignali, who was also a grocer. Chisel marks were also found on his back door. On September 15th, a grocer named Paul Durell found that someone had also attempted to cut through his rear door. A case of tomatoes that had been resting against the inside panel had foiled the attack. Then, as mysteriously as he had come, the Axeman vanished. Well, at least for a short time. In the early morning hours of the 10th of March in 1919, the Axeman struck again. It was perhaps his most terrible crime yet. Mrs. Charles Cortimiglia, a wife of a greengrocer in Gretna, just across the river from New Orleans, awakened to find her husband struggling with a large man in dark clothing, who was armed with an axe. As her husband fell in a bloody heap to the floor, Mrs. Cortimiglia held her 2-year-old daughter in her arms and begged her attacker for mercy, at least for the child. But the axe came down anyway, killing both the little girl and then fracturing the skull of her mother. The police were once again stumped, and rumblings began to suggest that perhaps the Axeman really wasn't a man at all. Some claimed that he might be a woman. Or a midget. Am I allowed to say midget? Small person? We'll stick with midget. Being this size would enable him to slip through the small space that he cut in all these doors, but others maintained that he was a creature from the world beyond. How else, they questioned, could all of these witnesses describe the killer as being a large man when only a small person could have slipped through the chiselled panels in these rear doors? The killer had to have come in through supernatural means, obviously, as each door was still locked when the attacks were discovered. Following the Cortimiglia murders, New Orleans was again filled with terror. The police stated that they believed all of the crimes to have been committed by the same man, a bloodthirsty maniac filled with a passion for human slaughter. And perhaps they were right. On Friday, March 14th, 1919, the editor of the New Orleans Times-Picayune newspaper received a letter from a man who claimed to be the Axeman.
Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there's any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 birthday time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to your people. Here it is.
It was at this point that this mysterious madman outlined not only his demands, however bizarre they may be, but also he detailed exactly what will happen should these citizens of the city not adhere to them.
I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed either in fact or realm of fancy. The Axeman.
Of course, at this point, the people of New Orleans, the police and the newspapers have absolutely no reason to suspect that he wouldn't keep good on any of these promises. The people of New Orleans did their best to follow the Axeman's instructions to the letter. Restaurants and clubs all over town were jammed with revellers. Friends and neighbours gathered in their homes to jazz it up, and midnight found the city alive with activity. Banjos, guitars and mandolins strummed into the night, while Joseph de Villa, a well-known local composer, he created the theme song for that night. He titled his composition The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, and, in typical New Orleans fashion, it became a huge hit after that. When the sun rose the next morning, it was learned that not a single attack had occurred that night. Even though it's doubtful that every home was filled with the sounds of jazz, the Axeman passed the city by, perhaps well satisfied by the celebration that was held in his honour. All was quiet for quite some time, until the night of August 3rd, 1919, in the darkest hours. A young girl named Sarah Loman was attacked with an axe while she slept in her locked and shuttered home. She received a brain concussion but she made a full recovery. Although the woman didn't die, the attack pushed hysteria in the city to new heights. Miss Lawman was not the owner of a grocery store. She was not Italian, and her attacker had not entered through the rear panel, but a window. In other words, if you could attack Sarah Lawman, then no one was safe. Was it really the Axeman though, or just a copycat? No one really knew this for sure. On August 10th, a man named Steve Boca stumbled from his home on Elysian Fields Avenue with axe wounds to his skull. Dripping with blood, he managed to make it to a friend's home about half a block away. The friend, Frank Janusa, treated the wounds as best he could and then called for help. The police who searched Boca's house found the classic signs of the Axeman, including the chiselled door panel and the bloody axe left lying on the floor. On September 2nd, a local druggist named William Carson fired several shots at an intruder who had broken into his house. The intruder left a broken door and an axe behind, but managed to escape without any injury. Why is nobody asking the question where he's getting all these axes from? Like, go and investigate axe shops, if there is such a thing. Then, in October, the Axeman appeared for a final slaughter. A grocer named Mike Pepitone. He was butchered in his bed during the night. His wife and 6 children asleep in the next room, and thankfully, they were all untouched. In this case, the usual clues had been left behind, but the authorities were no closer to learning his identity than they had been in the beginning. But then the horror suddenly came to an end. This was the last murder attributed to the Axeman. He was never seen nor heard from in New Orleans again. No one would ever learn the true identity of this maniac. Or would they? More than a year after the Axeman's final appearance, a former New Orleans man named Joseph Mumphrey was shot to death on the Pacific coast. He had been killed by a woman called Esther Albano, who was later discovered to be the widow of the Axeman's last victim, Mike Pepitone. The police began working to try and untangle the mystery that probably linked Mumphrey's murder to the Axeman's case. Some curious coincidences were revealed during this investigation. Mumphrey had once been the leader of a band of blackmailers back in New Orleans who had preyed on Italians. He had also been, for a separate matter, sent to prison just after the first axe murders happened in 1911. Then, in the summer of 1918, he was paroled and released at the exact same time that the Axeman appeared again. Immediately after the Pepitone murder, Mumphrey had left New Orleans for the coast, and then, strangely, the Axeman vanished as well. In spite of this though, there was no actual evidence to link him to any of the crimes. Was Joseph Mumphrey the Axeman? Or were there actually several killers, all working together to terrorise the Italian community? Or was this maniac actually what he claimed to be all along, the worst demon that ever existed, either in fact or in the realm of fancy? That's it for this video, folks. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to watch this or any of my videos. If you've gotten this far and fancy seeing more of my content, then please consider subscribing. It's free and it means that you can keep up to date with all the oddest goodness. But remember and activate that notification bell also. In the meantime, stay safe out there, folks. Please tell someone that you love them, and no matter what, remember, keep smiling.